And so next, I just, want to talk a little bit about this escaping the not enough trap or ending the suffering. And, I said viewpoint is really important. And what I realized was that I spent a lot of my life I'm a very compassionate person, and I care very much about the planet and people, as a lot of people do. And it was very painful to see all the environmental and destruction and human suffering on the planet. And that I carried that with me in my life. And that weight of that was making me miserable, I guess. And what I realized was that that was a bottomless hole, that if I constantly took that into myself and took that pain, I myself would always be miserable. And this was really kind of where I started to go down the Buddhist path. I didn't necessarily didn't know that's where I was going, but it turns out that the ideas that I was coming to and the conclusions I was coming to in my own self were very aligned with a lot of Buddhist notions about how we actually end suffering as humans in ourselves. And for me, it was really about understanding that there would never be enough time or resources or money to fix all the things that I wanted fixed. And so if I took that sort of logic conclusion, what it really meant was, well, okay, so I have a choice. Am I going to be myself miserable because I know that there will always be this endless suffering in the world? Or would it be more helpful if I myself became whole and complete, and then I, from that space of being okay, could then help others? That I would be more useful to the world if I was a light inside. I was more of a use to the world that way. And that radical shift in perspective of understanding that I needed to be okay, I needed to find a way within myself to be okay amidst the suffering of the world and the planet that I cared so much about, was a radical shift in viewpoint for me. That I didn't have to embody the suffering that I saw outside. That I didn't actually need to do that. That wasn't, there was, I think there's a sense that we need to take that on to show that we're a compassionate person. We need to, there's sort of a self-righteousness, like, oh, I feel so much, to show that I care and feel, I have to be, this unending sort of suffering within myself. And I think that's a not helpful view. And because it ends up, we just become a puddle, right? If we're a useless puddle of tears because of all the pain we see in the world, how's that going to help anybody? So I shifted that around, and really what I say is I became the tree, not the leaf. Rather than being a leaf blown around by the winds of all the suffering that I saw in the world, that I would become the tree, the strength, so that I could help other people. And another aspect to this that was really fundamental for me was this really unfusing of thoughts and feelings. So we all have these, thoughts and feelings, but so many of us are fused to them and mistake them, this great case of mistaken identity, to be ourselves. And we're, a really important aspect of meditation is understanding that we are not our thoughts and feelings, and sensing this greater awareness that we really are, and that we witness our thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors, but we are not bound to them. We can observe them and understand that they aren't who we are. And I tell this story to a lot of my clients about the Ship of Fools. This was a Plato allegory where he talks about a case where there's a ship. So imagine a ship with a lot of sailors, and they've locked the captain in the hold. And now they're having a party on the deck, and they're taking the boat this way and that. And they're drunken, but nobody can decide where to go because there's no captain. So they're just basically, the boat isn't getting anywhere. And the job of meditation is really to free the captain from the hold, quell the mutiny that's happening in our minds. So this is really an analogy of our minds. And there's this mutiny going on, I think, for many of us with our thoughts. And what we need to do is we need to resurrect the captain. We need to bring our true selves, whatever you want to call it, source, true self. For some people, it's a spiritual, you know, higher consciousness, whatever that is for you. That's who you really are. And you need to understand that you're the person, and that is who we really are. And put our thoughts, our sailors and feelings into perspective, and detach from them in order to be mentally sound. I think it's just so, so key. And meditation is a huge part of really being able to separate and resurrect the captain or our true self and see our thoughts, witness them, and not react to them. And there's another fundamental piece, which is it's allowing what is present now and really being able to come into the present moment and feel this awareness that we really are, or captain, if that works for you, and allow what is happening around us, and in a non-reactive way, without feeling compelled to judge and label everything that's coming in and out of our world, because that's fundamentally, that is all part of reacting to this illusion of these thoughts that are actually quite illusory, and they aren't actually real. They aren't who you really are. And so we let that go and we come back to what is fundamentally here now, and the ground of our being, our awareness. I was going to do an activity, but I'm a little aware of time. Shane, can you give me a time check? And
yeah, it'd probably be better if we could just keep going, and then I can put these in as recommended exercises and notes for people to try afterwards.
Perfect. Great. And then the fourth one is really guarding your mental inputs. I'm really big on this. I used to just kind of take in, you know, I would sort of randomly read the New York Times every day and just take in this news. And I chose what I wanted, but I don't believe I chose carefully enough. And I really believe that we should be the gatekeepers of our minds, and we decide what comes in, and we should be much more discriminating and feel that it's okay to be much more discriminating about what we take in. And that we shouldn't feel like we have a duty to read a certain amount of news about a certain amount of things. And I actually haven't read the news for more than a year. And it doesn't mean I don't read lots of things. I'm actually a voracious reader of all kinds of things, constantly reading about science and all these coaching and all these things I'm working with that are relevant to what I'm passionate about. But I don't feel like I owe it to anybody anymore to stay on top of the news just because, you know. And, you know, for me, the mental check on that was, well, you know, before we had the internet, before we had all this 100 years ago, was it, you know, people would just know what was happening in their community, and that was okay and enough. So why isn't that okay and enough now? You know, so I just really feel that it's very important to decide what's important to you, decide what you're passionate about and what you can affect, and where you want to make change in the world, and feel perfectly fine with that being, you know, what you let in. And that it's really fundamental to our happiness to filter and guard our mental being.